com, and this is another episode of Ask a Property Manager. How you doing today, Andrew?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I just realized I forgot to put it up on screen. I always put the little, Ask a PM. What is this, number 34?
34.
Yeah. Let's show that. You got to get that
There
up
we
on the
go.
screen.
Oh, look at that.
Technology, it's so cool. So, if you guys hear any background noise, Andrew and I are both located in the Buffalo, New York area, and it is extremely windy today. So,
I feel like I should be I don't know if you guys can tell or not, but my car is actually rocking back and forth from the wind.
yeah,
I feel like I should be a weather reporter, like one of those people standing outside in the storm trying to broadcast.
yeah. So if we see just like a random tree fall through your car, we'll know what's going on.
Yeah, that would suck. That would add to the bad day.
It'd be good for ratings, though, right?
Right.
Some cheap views out of it. But yeah, I got a tree in my backyard that I just planted that is knocked over right now, and I've got a piece of roofing that's kind of falling off the side right now. So I got to take a look at that later.
Yeah, we just got a phone call from right before I walked down here. We just got a phone call from one of our tenants that a tree, I don't know if it's a tree or a tree limb has come down, and it sounds like it's ripped the electric lines off of one of our properties. So it's going to be an interesting weather day here in Buffalo.
Well, yeah, that's the interesting thing about being a property manager, right? If you got 200 potential issues when it's windy like this out versus somebody who owns one house. So the likelihood of you having an issue is a little bit higher. So.
Well, and that's something we've never actually talked about is like storm preparedness, storm readiness, stuff like that, which is we could probably do an entire episode just on that. And we're talking out loud here, and I'm sure that the people don't really care to listen to it, but we should really do an episode on like how to, disaster preparedness and what are your plans in the event that something does happen? Because I do see those questions pop up on the page from time to time, especially when they've got, like when Hurricane Irma came through and stuff like that. There were a lot of questions on that. So that would be an episode. We should think about that one a little more.
Yeah, I'd be game for it. So I say we jump into this and we get into probably the juiciest question. All right.
Okay.
So this one comes from Jen, and she asked about the fact that she had a murder-suicide take place in February in one of the properties I managed. A biohazard cleaning was done, and now I can begin to market for rent. How would I disclose this in the MLS?
So, all right, I'll start. I guess we'll give our standard disclaimers. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. Talk to yours before you listen to any of the advice that I give. It depends on what the laws are in your state regarding disclosing those things. And every state has a little bit different disclosure laws. Murders and suicides don't have to be disclosed in the state of New York. So at that point, it's more of a, do you want to disclose it? Would you feel morally or ethically obligated to disclose it? Type of a situation, but there's no legal requirement to disclose that in New York. We actually had a client who was buying I think it was a single family up in the city of Lockport, which is about 25 minutes north of me. Mm-hmm. They were buying a house, and unbeknownst to us, there'd been a murder in the house prior to that. And we didn't know about it until she actually did a Google search on the address, and the news story popped up. And it was at that point that they decided to not go forward with the home purchase and looked for something different. No. But there was no, at least in New York, there's no requirement to disclose a suicide or a murder. I know, for instance, we have one property under management that has had a suicide in it prior to our management and prior to our client's ownership. Mm-hmm. That wasn't disclosed when we purchased the property, but we found out about it after the fact from one of the neighbors. So it's one of those things where it's a fine line. You really have to figure out what your legal obligation is, and then beyond that, what your morals and ethics tell you about whether or not you should disclose it. Keep in mind, like our housing stock in the Buffalo area is predominantly older, 1800s, mid to late 1800s in a lot of areas. More often than not, there's been a dead body in the property. They used to lay out the dead bodies in the property, and that's where the term wake comes from. They would lay them in the parlor, and that's people would come to visit and things like that before funeral homes really became a thing. Mm-hmm. So that's something to consider. Beyond that, check your state laws, I guess.
All right. Let's get off a less morbid topic here. So
yeah, right.
We have a question. Kong asked, who in this group requires an application fee? I have someone who contacted me about my place, and they're questioning about the application fee. I explained to them what the fee is for, and they said, I'm not paying that. Nice try. They went on saying, I never had to pay an application fee. What should I do when I get these types of people who don't want to pay the fee?
If somebody doesn't want to pay an application fee, they're probably not going to want to pay you rent. Let them become somebody else's problem. You dodged a bullet very early in the process here. So if they're not willing to follow the rules from before they even become a tenant, chances are they're not going to want to follow the rules once they become a tenant. Just move on. Just move on. There's no need to even further respond to that person.
Yeah.
As far as application fees go, we handle ours differently than a lot of property managers do. I see a lot of property managers charging somewhere between like $35 and $55 for their application fees. We actually take a $200 application fee. What that effectively does is it takes that tenant off the market while you make your decision, rather than them going around town and putting in 5 or 6 applications with different apartments and just taking the one that best suits them. So a little bit higher application fee kind of it removes the tire kickers, first of all. We don't get people who are applying just for the sake of applying to see if they'll get it, which reduces the time that we spend screening applicants and stuff like that. But it also, once they make that $200 commitment, they're less likely to be out searching for other apartments.
Now,
go ahead.
Sorry, do you make that known on the listing itself that it's a $200 application fee?
I don't know if it's on the listing itself, but it is part of our pre-screening. When we talk to them, we do mention the fact that there is the application fee.
And do you get a lot of people once they hear that number that just are like, all right, I'm good?
More often than not, we'll get them come out and look at the apartment, and then they make their decision from there. If they really like the apartment, if they really want the apartment, if someone's truly interested in the apartment and they read the selection criteria and they know that they're going to be able to qualify for the apartment, they have no problem putting down that $200. I've never had somebody say no as a result. What we do a little bit differently is that $200, if they're approved, I roll that whole thing right into their security deposit. So it's security deposit minus $200. Whatever the remainder is due within 5 days, as opposed to just charging the fee. Is that your kid in the background?
Yeah, right. My wife works at a school. I'm working from home today, and my son's never home, but he's home this week. Hey, buddy.
That's exciting.
He's in a little jumper off to the side in the doorway.
Nice.
Sorry.
No problem. So if they're approved, we take the $200 and we put it right towards their security. If they're not approved for any reason, we hold $50 for each person that we run the credit and background checks on, and we refund the rest of it to them.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that answers that question. And I think I actually might have commented on that question too in the group, where it's just like, if you put things out online, you're going to get people that are going to have an opinion that you're not going to agree with. They're going to get back.
Everybody has an opinion, yeah.
And you can tell when somebody posts this into the group that certain people will just be like, move on to the next one. Don't waste your time. And I see those people continually in the group that'll comment with that. You can tell these are people who are like, no, I got a system and a process. It's fine. Just move along. There's always going to be that person that wants to like bring you down a peg or two because they have an opinion. It's just like, okay, that's fine.
Exactly.
Move along, Okay. We got a question here from Christy, who also says, great answer so far. Thanks. So we're getting to your question right now, Christy.
Perfect.
Christy asks, my tenant just asked to add her boyfriend to the lease since he'll be moving in with her. Does this make any other changes to the lease, such as rent? Or does this make any other changes to the lease, such as rent, etc.? Her lease is up in a couple of months. Does it make sense to add the boyfriend to the lease now and explain that rent will be going up with the new rental agreement, or should they just it was going to go up anyway? So basically, sorry, I might have screwed that up a little bit, but boyfriend's moving in right now, but the lease is up in a couple of months. Does it just make sense to add the boyfriend in a couple of months, or should she handle this right now, the situation with the boyfriend, and what are the ramifications on the lease?
So the way our leases are set up is you have two different types of people on the lease. You have responsible parties, which are going to be the named parties right at the top of page 1 of the lease. And then we have additional occupants, which are going to be people who are living in the home but not necessarily contributing to the rent. So think younger kids, or maybe like a college age kid who is only home for breaks or something like that. They'd be an additional occupant. They wouldn't be a responsible party. Okay. So I think the first thing you have to determine here is whether this person's going to be a responsible party or if they're going to be just an additional occupant. Either way, with them being over 18, I would still run the credit and background checks on them just so that you know what the circumstances are. if they're going to be a responsible party, I would probably also run the income verification and things like that. You know, screen them just the same way you would any other tenant, and then it's just a matter of determining where they're going on the lease. Are they responsible, or are they just an occupant? But either way, I would not wait the 2 months to add them. I would go ahead and add him now on just an addendum to the lease, and then the next lease that you generate, just make sure it's generated with both people on in whatever spots they belong in. And I would, you know, it's up to you if you want to up the rent at that point. Yeah. Chances are you're not going to be able to change the rent during the existing lease term. So you might be stuck for those 2 months, but once you get to the next lease term, you should be able to up your rent or do whatever you want to do.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good advice. Actually, Christy just commented here that they spoke yesterday, and he's going to be listed as an occupant right now. So your advice would be like, that's fine, and then in a couple of months you can decide what you want to do at that point, and if you're going to be
I mean, I would go ahead. I'd go ahead and screen him now. He's going to be living in the property, so I would go ahead and screen him now. Screen him, and then just do a simple lease addendum for the next 2 months saying that he's being added as an additional occupant to the apartment, and go from there. I'm actually kind of surprised her tenant reached out. More often than not, you get people that they just sneak the additional occupant in and hope that you don't notice. So kudos to her tenant for reaching out to her. They have a good landlord-tenant relationship there.
Yeah, very cool. All right, let's move to the next question here. This one comes from Maria, and she asks about the fact that she has inherited a month-to-month tenant with the purchase of a duplex. So she gave this lady a note that said they would not be extending the lease past May 1st. Now, instead of paying for April, she is asking to use her security deposit, saying she needs money in order to move to a new place. I told her absolutely not. There is no last month rent prepaid in her lease. So now I'm thinking whether to give her a 3-day pay or quit note, or just wait and see if she leaves on May 1st like she intends. In her state, an eviction takes 1.5 to 2 months. And further along in this post, she expressed that she's concerned about the fact that if she goes through with an eviction, this could take longer than just letting her leave on her own and possibly getting that rent anyways.
Yeah, it's a sticky situation. I always err on the side of issue the notice anyway. She's already issued the 30-day notice, but now it sounds, and these are New York terms, so her mileage may vary depending on state. You know, in New York, it's a 30-day notice of non-renewal for a month-to-month, and then it's a 3-day notice for non-payment. So she's already issued the 30-day notice. At this point, it sounds like the tenant is in non-payer status. I would just go ahead and issue the 3-day pay or quit notice. And you know, it is what it is. If the woman is going to stay, can you see my car rocking right now?
Yeah. That's windy.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. I'm actually I gotta show you guys this.
We can see the trees a little bit in the background.
You see that tree over there?
Oh yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, is that just bent right over the front entryway of your building there?
No, it's still standing, but it's definitely waving back and forth quite a bit. There's a little bit smaller one.
Yeah.
Drop my camera back here. If the woman was going to stay past the end of April, she was going to stay past the end of April anyway, more than likely. So I would just go ahead, issue the notice. Whether or not you decide to file the actual eviction is up to you, but at least that way you're not delaying time in getting those notices out. I would go ahead and just issue the notice. She's non-payer. She's a non-payer at this point.
Yep.
So you have, at least that puts the ball back in your court as to whether or not you want to actually go through and file the eviction paperwork.
Yeah. So that way, if you weren't to do that and then you decide you do want to file an eviction 2 weeks later, then you got to add an additional 2 weeks onto your timeline that you're talking about. So. Yeah,
exactly. It just slows the whole process up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that that covers the 4 questions we had this week. Thank you to everyone in the Facebook group. If you're watching this from a different group, Rent Prep for Landlords is the name of the Facebook group. Tons of helpful advice in there. And each week, Andrew kind of breaks down different questions that he pulls out from the group. So thank you to Christy for watching and the good question. Also Kong, Jen, and Maria as well for some really great questions. Thank you.
Yeah, these are good questions this week. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for your time, Andrew, and always appreciate the insights.